Good morning. I've been crunching my brain, I guess, is one way of putting it. I've been in the process of learning Lisp and kind of expanding my way into programming theory, not just practical. I still need to get into functional programming and the benefits there. I've just been kind of focused on the idea of abstraction and simplifying my overall interface, no matter what it is, because simplifying my interface makes everything more intuitive to me. But the more you abstract, the harder it gets to deal with bugs, I guess. So that's why this idea of Lisp tiny functions that just so simple they basically can't be wrong, that send data back and forth, and it just builds on top of itself so well. Alan Kay's idea of an object as a server that has its own, basically handles itself in every aspect, really opens me up to the idea that you can have code that you don't need to manage. I've also been talking to this very, very intelligent gentleman through work, and we were talking about keyboards. He has a custom keyboard design, and he got on this tangent about programming, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting to me. Can you tell me some more? And he just, dove down the rabbit hole of, the early days of computing and small talk and how things changed with graphical interfaces, particularly for the blind. Like there used to be a standardized set of output, standard text, standard output format. Like nowadays there's different text formats, but they're not really necessary. You can even go so far as fonts, but basically before everything was standardized and it was easy to add voice controls to everything, but you create a GUI and you introduce lots of other elements, arguably undesirable elements, particularly for a work environment. His statement was Microsoft sold a graphical user interface as porn and games, which, when you think about it, really isn't that far off, I guess. You can display text and format text on a screen quite well, but if your job is inputting data in a spreadsheet, I mean, come on. What's that argument going to be? Well, I need a GUI because I want to be able to click really fast, click on things and move things around. It's easier to visualize, not even easier to visualize. Like resolution, but you can have higher resolution terminal screens. Tangents upon tangents, sorry. So, and he's the one that got me started on this Alan Kay Lisp deep dive, and he was talking about a lot of things. What was it? Yeah. That the code is developed, or that programs, even to the level of operating systems, are developed in order to keep the developers in business. And when you adopt a framework of sorts, the framework was created, it's free, it's open source, it's available. It's open source because it's only as open as the code is readable. But the idea that you're selling the software is a service because you create it and then you create dependencies, or rather other people adopt it and create their own dependencies. And then when things change, it's like, oh, well, I kind of need that framework. What do you do after you've worked with a framework for 5 years and done nothing but develop your skills with that framework for 5 years? And the framework, shuts its doors and or becomes such a gigantic and buggy mess of spaghetti code that its security vulnerabilities galore. It's useless. What do you do at that point? And the answer is start over. You just lost 5 years of your life. Or 5 years of your educating life. I'm sure you probably made some money during that time. But the idea of... it said that people do it at all levels, and it's an interesting idea because I've been thinking a lot about... I'm a capitalist. I am a capitalist. Capital A, I guess. A is A. You know. So, capitalism is the greatest way to drive productivity and to create results. Good. Capitalism has driven down the prices on so many general goods, foods, and necessities way lower than price fixing could possibly sustain. A socialist concept like price fixing. And everyone's happy all along the way. You know? Well, everyone's happy in that, you know, people are operating willingly, I should say. You can go to work every day and be productive and get paid and then go out on the weekends and have fun and still be unhappy. But that's a whole nother... happiness is another discussion. But it has driven the steps we've made in the last few, even just decades, towards eliminating poverty and hunger in the world are unreal. They're literally unbelievable. You would not believe them. Things are getting better all around. There's actually a book that was written on this, as far as how people think everything's bad, but everything's really, 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 really good. Oh, there's so much violence. Oh, so much school shootings. There's starvation all over the world. Oh, there's greed, anger, hate, frustration. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Suffering leads to anger, which leads to hate, which leads to suffering. But that's like a narrative that drives, sells newspapers. Newspapers. Gosh. Tangents. Sorry. How do you even watch this? You don't. I don't think you do. The idea that... so capitalism drives that productivity. Like, that is a good thing. Like, legit a good thing. And it's good for the world. Because companies like Pfizer invest billions with a B of dollars into research that goes nowhere. Zero place. They put all that money into a trash can. And then all the way at the end of that $1 billion, they spend one more 10 grand test, and they find a heart medication that saves 1 million people's lives. And then once Pfizer registers it with the FDA, everyone else goes, oh, okay, here's how you make that molecule. There we go. We've just copied your work, and we're saving lives all over the world. And our pills are cheaper than yours. So have a good time with that. So, like, Pfizer has to make money in order to drive this machine. And I have reservations about that, too. I've started to think about America or Americans as a machine for production. And and I don't mean a machine for production in the good way. I mean that we are... I don't want to say programmed, but like socially guided toward driving the consumerism that drives our productivity, that creates these amazing things that the entire world benefits from. And overall, it's good, yeah. But is it fair, and are we aware that it's happening? I don't know. So, gosh, I said all that to say this, trademark, that there's actually a negative impact on the development of things that can be reused freely. So, and things that are super powerful like a computer chip, a CPU. The ability to work with that is a force multiplier that is, it's orders of magnitude above what was previously available. It's like you just invented the wheel, and then you get a CPU, and it's like, wow, I've got a space rocket. Like, that's unbelievable. So when you go from a wheel to a space rocket, that doesn't really drive consumerism, which drives the machine, which drives the capitalism, which drives the productivity, and drives the creation. So when you come up with that thing, and this is like the singularity idea. It's when you reach that point, boom, everything is possible. Everything is open. But that doesn't drive capitalism. So the result is products which are, and this was something that I would have dismissed outright as anti-capitalist screed, but the products of software and even the products of, firmware for accessing and using CPUs is closed, is disabled, is artificially limited, is intentionally bloated. It's intentionally slowed down to drive the purchase of the next version. Microsoft made a great OS. They made a few great OSs, actually. But they're never going to make the OS to end all OSs. That's never going to happen. It can't happen. It would be suicide, and it would be a thing that destroys the company. So that style of coding, that type of development, which makes things infinitely reusable and eminently portable, is not even necessarily frowned upon, but just not taught. It's not considered. Because if I go into a business, and I've worked IT for a long time, you go into a business and you're like, hey, get out of here, buddy. You're done. We're doing a walkout or something like that. The old IT guy is like dragging, kicking, and screaming, going, this place will crash in 3 days without me. You can't do this. You'll regret this. And usually it does. I mean, the company picks up the pieces because the guy was crazy and taking advantage of the position. But it's always there because it's always job security. I don't know. I guess you can't trust people to be as productive as you would like them to be. So the drive has to come from someplace else. It has to come from the drive of money or the drive of more stuff. So perhaps it's the case that most people, if given a minimum income, which is going to come sooner than I think, though, because automated driving, that's going to break society if it doesn't turn into a mincome. It may be that if everyone had no drive to push toward things, if they had a minimum income and it was all enjoyment, they wouldn't be productive. But there is a portion of the population which is very productive to a range of extremely productive. And I don't know how big that range is. And if you just told everyone, hey, we got all this, your food, your this, your that, it's all handled, don't worry about it. Here's your minimum income. That, I don't know what percentage of the population would be that would make art and continue writing books. And, it's just the creative types, I guess. Creativity's crazy. You got to get it out of you. I got to go. But the idea that I can make that code, I can write my code so that, because I'm managing it, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now. I thought about this earlier, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, I can write code for me that's automatic, that manages itself. And I was doing it without even thinking of it. I'm like, well, stop. Just write good code. The rest will follow. Do good work. I'm trying to protect part of that, or whatever that is. It's weird. It just permeates, So I'm trying to get into this idea of self-managing code, and the concept that the code can manage itself if you write it correctly, if you architect it properly. It can manage itself. It's just hard because I've never considered that as a possibility. I mean, it's always like, well, there's always going to be a bug. Well, there's always going to be something weird. Well, there's always going to be something wrong. I'm always going to have to dig back into old code and try to understand it. And no, if you write it correctly, you'll never have to look at that code again. It's just, it will be layers of abstraction way above that. That'll still be functional. But it's like an idea. It's like a paradigm of, it's the polymorphism. It's making it so it can handle anything and handle it appropriately. So you don't have to check it later. I hope some of this has made sense. All right. I don't know.